I'm Samantha Mitchell, 35, and that moment at my father's 60th birthday changed everything. My 8-year-old daughter Lily spent weeks making a hand-decorated photo frame for her Uncle Jason. When he opened it, his face twisted with disgust. "Cheap, worthless trash," he sneered, dropping it carelessly on the table. Lily's eyes filled with tears, her small shoulders slumping. The room fell silent. My blood boiled as Jason caught my gaze and smirked. That smirk, it was a declaration of war, and he had no idea what he'd started. Before I continue this story, where are you watching from today? If you're enjoying family drama stories, hit that like button and subscribe to catch more real-life experiences like mine. Trust me, what happened after Jason's cruel comment is something you won't want to miss. Growing up in our middle-class suburban home in Minneapolis, I always felt the imbalance. My parents, Margaret and Robert Mitchell, provided us with comfortable lives, but comfort came with strings attached, especially regarding my younger brother Jason. Mom was loving but conflict avoidant to a fault. Whenever tensions rose, she'd retreat to the kitchen, busying herself with baking or cleaning. "Let's not make a scene" became her mantra, one I heard countless times throughout my childhood whenever Jason's behavior crossed lines. Dad was different. A successful owner of a regional construction supply company, he worked his way up from nothing and was proud of it. But he had a blind spot the size of Texas when it came to Jason. As the youngest and only son, Jason could do no wrong in Dad's eyes. When Jason broke my science fair project the night before, judging Dad called it boys being boys. When Jason crashed his third car at 19, Dad bought him a newer, better model the following week. Despite the favoritism, I worked hard. I graduated top of my class, earned a scholarship to Northwestern, and built a successful career in marketing. I met David during my second year at a consulting firm. He was in IT, brilliant but humble, and the first person who seemed to truly see me. We married after 3 years together, and when Lily came along, I felt like I'd finally created the family I'd always wanted, one built on mutual respect and genuine love. Jason took a different path. He dropped out of 2 colleges, cycled through 6 jobs in 4 years, and lived in our parents' guest house until he was 28. Even now at 30, he depends on Dad for everything: his apartment, his car payments, even his monthly expenses. Dad calls it helping him find his footing. I call it enabling. "You just don't understand how hard things have been for Jason," Mom would say whenever I expressed frustration. But what about how hard I worked? What about the fact that I never got the same support? Last Christmas, Jason showed up 3 hours late and drunk to our family dinner. Dad laughed it off while Mom quietly replaced the dried-out turkey. When Lily offered to show Jason the holiday card she made, he was too busy texting to even look up. "Don't take it personally," David whispered, squeezing my hand under the table. "He's just jealous that you have your life together." David has been my rock through all of this. While my family normalized Jason's behavior, David validated my feelings. "You're not crazy, Sam," he'd assure me after particularly frustrating family gatherings. "Your parents have created this situation." Rachel, my best friend since college, was even more direct. "Your brother is a narcissistic man-child, and your parents are his enablers," she declared over wine one night, after a particularly disastrous Thanksgiving where Jason borrowed $300 from my purse. But despite everything, I kept trying. I invited Jason to Lily's birthday parties. I sent him Christmas gifts. I called him monthly. I did everything a good big sister should do because family was important to me. I wanted Lily to know her uncle, to have the extended family I valued despite its flaws. As Dad's 60th birthday approached, I threw myself into planning. I organized a family gathering at my parents' house, coordinated with relatives, and prepared a slideshow celebrating Dad's life. And I encouraged Lily when she wanted to make something special for her uncle, the uncle who rarely acknowledged her existence. "He'll love it this time, sweetie," I assured her as she carefully glued the final family photo into the frame. "You did such an amazing job." I believed it too. I wanted to believe that Jason could change, that he could see the value in his niece's heartfelt gift. I wanted to believe that this birthday could be different, a fresh start for our family. How wrong I was. The day of Dad's birthday arrived with perfect early autumn weather. Sunlight streamed through the maple trees in my parents' yard, their leaves just beginning to turn golden at the edges. I arrived early to help Mom with final preparations, Lily bouncing with excitement beside me while David carried in the cake. I'd special ordered chocolate with buttercream, Dad's favorite. "Where's Uncle Jason?" Lily asked, clutching her carefully wrapped gift. She'd spent the morning retying the ribbon until it was perfect. "He'll be here soon," I promised, though I wasn't certain. Jason's concept of time was notoriously flexible, especially for family events. To my surprise, Jason arrived only 20 minutes late, sauntering in with his girlfriend Amber, a willowy blonde with calculating eyes who'd been in the picture for about 6 months. She carried an expensive-looking gift bag from a high-end store. "Happy birthday, old man," Jason said, slapping Dad on the back before helping himself to a beer from the cooler. The gathering was small but lively, my parents' closest friends, a few relatives and us. After lunch, we moved to the living room for gifts. Dad opened them one by one, appropriately appreciative of each item. When he unwrapped my marketing team's custom-created book of family photos through the years, his eyes misted over. "This is something else, Sammy," he said, using my childhood nickname as he hugged me tight. Then came Lily's moment. She'd been waiting patiently, her gift for Jason held carefully on her lap. When all of Dad's presents were opened, she approached her uncle shyly. "I made this for you, Uncle Jason," she said, holding out the small package wrapped in paper she'd decorated herself with drawn stars and hearts. The room quieted, all eyes on this sweet exchange. Jason looked surprised, then put upon as if receiving a gift from his niece was an inconvenience. He took it with obvious reluctance. "You didn't need to get me anything," he said flatly. "It's not my birthday. I just wanted to make you something special," Lily explained, her voice small but eager. Jason unwrapped it carelessly, tearing the paper she'd spent so long decorating. When he pulled out the hand-decorated wooden frame with our family photo inside, the one from last Christmas, where we'd actually gotten Jason to stand still for a picture, his lip curled. "Cheap, worthless trash," he said dismissively, dropping it onto the coffee table. The glass cracked with a small, heartbreaking sound. The room froze. Lily's face crumpled, her eyes instantly welling with tears. I felt David tense beside me, ready to intervene. "Jason," Mom gasped. I was on my feet before I realized I'd moved. "How dare you speak to her that way?" My voice shook with fury. "She worked on that for weeks." Jason rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on, it's just some dollar store junk with glitter glued on it. What am I supposed to do with this?" Lily burst into tears and ran from the room. David followed her while I stood facing my brother, trembling with rage. "Apologize. Now." Each word felt like it might crack my teeth. "Samantha, let's not make a scene." Mom started, her face pale. "Jason didn't mean it that way," Dad added, already making excuses. Jason smirked, that infuriating expression of someone who knows he'll face no consequences. "Sorry, your kid can't handle the truth." I grabbed my purse. "We're leaving." "Happy birthday, Dad." The drive home was tense and tearful. Lily cried quietly in the back seat, while David tried to comfort her. "Uncle Jason is just having a bad day, sweetheart." "No," I said firmly. "Uncle Jason was cruel, and that's not okay." "You did nothing wrong, Lily. Your gift was beautiful and thoughtful." That night, after finally getting Lily to sleep, I collapsed on the couch beside David. "I can't believe he would say that to an 8-year-old, David said, his arm around my shoulders. "Actually, scratch that. I can absolutely believe it." "I'm done," I whispered. "I've spent my whole life making excuses for him accepting less, keeping the peace. Not anymore. Not after he hurt Lily." The phone rang. "Mom, of course." "Jason didn't mean it," she said immediately. "He's under a lot of pressure right now. Amber's been pushing him about moving in together, and you know how he gets when he feels cornered." "Mom, he made your granddaughter cry. On purpose. He's your brother, Samantha. Family forgives." After hanging up, I scrolled through old photos on my phone, family gatherings where Jason dominated, holidays ruined by his tantrums, my achievements overshadowed by his needs. A pattern as clear as day that I'd refused to see. "I'm not letting this go," I told David. "Not this time." The next morning, Rachel called after I texted her what happened. "That's it," she declared. "This is your villain origin story, Sam. Time to stop being the peacekeeper and start fighting back." Looking at Lily across the breakfast table, her usual sparkle dimmed. I knew Rachel was right. This wasn't just about me anymore. 3 days after the birthday disaster, I texted Jason asking to meet. To my surprise, he agreed, suggesting a coffee shop downtown near his apartment, the apartment Dad paid for, of course. "Are you sure about this?" David asked as I grabbed my keys. "You know how he twists things." "I need to do this," I said. "For Lily. And for me." I arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a latte, and rehearsed what I wanted to say. I would be calm but firm. I would focus on Lily, not our history. I would set boundaries. My plans derailed the moment Jason walked in with our cousin Emma beside him. Emma and I had been close growing up, the only girls among a sea of boy cousins. We'd drifted apart in recent years as her career in real estate took off, but I still considered her an ally. Seeing her walk in with Jason sent warning signals flashing through my mind. "Hope you don't mind. I brought Emma," Jason said, not sounding sorry at all. "We were having lunch when you texted." Emma hugged me awkwardly. "I heard about what happened at the party. So unfortunate." They sat across from me, creating the distinct feeling of being outnumbered. "Jason," I began, sticking to my script. "What you said to Lily was cruel and unacceptable. She's just a child trying to show you love." Jason sighed dramatically. "Here we go. Always the victim, aren't you, Sam? This isn't about me. It's about how you treated my daughter." "You're blowing things way out of proportion," Jason said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "I barely said anything. Lily's just oversensitive. Wonder where she gets that from." "You called her gift cheap, worthless trash," I reminded him. "Everyone heard you." "That's not how I remember it," Jason shrugged. "I might have said it wasn't my taste, but you know how kids exaggerate." I stared at him, incredulous. "Are you seriously trying to gaslight me about something that happened 3 days ago in front of a dozen witnesses?" "Sam," Emma interjected, her voice soothing in a way that instantly raised my hackles. "Jason told me what really happened. He said Lily burst into tears when he tried to thank her for the gift, but mentioned it didn't match his decor. You know how Jason's been working with that interior designer for his apartment." I felt like I'd stepped into the Twilight Zone. "That's not what happened. At all." "See what I mean?" Jason said to Emma. "She's always been like this. Makes up these dramatic scenarios where everyone's against her." Emma patted my hand. "We're worried about you, Sam. Jason says you've been really high-strung lately, imagining slights where there aren't any." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Emma, who had been there for my wedding, who had held Lily as a newborn, was completely buying Jason's twisted version of events. "Has he told you what he's been saying about me to the rest of the family?" Jason continued, his voice dropping to a concerned whisper. "She's been calling everyone, saying I'm some kind of monster. Even told Aunt Patricia I steal from Dad." "I've done no such thing," I exclaimed louder than I intended. A couple at the next table glanced over. "See how defensive she gets," Jason murmured to Emma. "Sam, we're just concerned," Emma said. "Family is everything. You know that." "If family is everything," I said slowly, "then why is my daughter, your family, crying herself to sleep because of what Jason said?" "Kids are resilient," Jason waved dismissively. "She'll forget about it by next week." "This conversation is pointless," I said, gathering my things. "I came here hoping you'd show a shred of remorse, but clearly that was too much to expect." As I stood, Jason's expression hardened. "Before you go off on your high horse, you should know I've talked to Mom and Dad. They think you're overreacting too. If you keep making trouble trying to turn them against me, you might not like how that turns out." "Is that a threat?" "Just reality, sis. Dad's retiring soon. The business, the house, all of it's going to be decided. You really want to be on his bad side right now." The implication was clear. Jason expected to inherit everything, the business my father had built, the family home, and he thought he could use it as leverage. Emma looked uncomfortable but said nothing. "You should think about what really matters," Jason added. "I'd hate for this silly misunderstanding to affect your inheritance." I walked out without another word, hands shaking as I called David. "It was a complete ambush," I told him, pacing beside my car. "Emma's completely under his spell, and now he's threatening me about Dad's inheritance." "The inheritance? What does that have to do with anything?" "Apparently everything," I said. "I think Jason's worried I'll influence Dad about the business." When I called my parents that evening to explain what happened, Mom answered with a sigh. "Jason said you might call. Samantha, can't we just move past this? Your father doesn't need this stress." "Mom, are you serious? After what Jason did?" "He said you misunderstood. That you've been very emotional lately. Let me talk to Dad." Dad's voice was gruff. "Sammy, I don't want to get in the middle of you and your brother's squabbles. You're adults now." "This isn't a squabble, Dad. This is about how Jason treated Lily. Kids need to toughen up sometimes. World's not always kind." I hung up, stunned. They were completely under Jason's spell. "Document everything David advised that night. Every conversation, every text. If this is really about your dad's business, Jason might be up to something bigger than just being a jerk to Lily." I nodded slowly, realizing this battle had just begun. This wasn't just about a broken photo frame anymore. This was about decades of manipulation, and a brother who would stop at nothing to protect what he saw as his birthright. Over the next 2 weeks, I began piecing together the puzzle that was my brother's life. The more I discovered, the more alarmed I became. My first step was reaching out to Tyler Anderson, a childhood friend, who now worked as an operations manager at my father's company. We met for lunch at a small diner far from the office where no one would recognize us. "I wasn't sure about meeting," Tyler admitted, glancing around nervously. "Things at work are tense." "Because of Jason, I guessed." Tyler nodded. "Your brother's been coming around more often. Says your dad is grooming him to take over." I nearly choked on my water. Jason has zero experience in construction supply. He couldn't tell a joist from a junction box. That's not stopping him from making promises to people. Telling some they'll get promotions when he's in charge, implying others might not have a place. What about Dad? Is he really planning to hand over the business to Jason? Tyler shrugged. Your dad's been vague about succession plans, but Jason's been using the company credit card like it's his personal account. Expensive lunches, gas for his car, even bought some furniture recently. Claimed it was for the office lounge, but it got delivered to his apartment. This was worse than I thought. Does Dad know? Accounting has flagged it a few times, but your dad always smooths it over. As I dug deeper, a pattern emerged. Jason had been insinuating himself into every aspect of our father's business while creating the impression that he was the natural successor. A chance encounter provided my next lead. I bumped into Amber, Jason's girlfriend, at an upscale department store. She was shopping with a friend and didn't notice me one aisle over. Their conversation drifted clearly to where I stood. "So he's really going to inherit everything?" her friend asked. Amber laughed. "That's the plan. His father adores him and his mother's a pushover. The sister's the only problem." "What about her?" "Jason says she's always been jealous of him, but he knows how to handle her. By the time the old man signs everything over, she'll be completely cut out." I froze, pretending to examine a display of watches while they continued. "What about Jason's gambling? Thought you said that was getting worse." Amber's voice dropped. "He's handling it. Once the business is his, money won't be an issue. Besides, I've got my own insurance policy." They moved on before I could hear more, but the revelation about gambling explained a lot. Jason's increasingly desperate need for money, his fixation on the inheritance, his determination to remain Dad's golden child at any cost. When I shared my discoveries with David, his face grew serious. "Sam, if Jason's got gambling debts, and he's counting on your dad's money to fix them. This could get uglier than we thought. The next day I drove to my parents' house, hoping to talk to my mother alone. Dad would be at work and Mom usually spent Tuesdays gardening. I found her in the backyard pruning roses. She seemed tired, the lines around her eyes deeper than I remembered. "Mom, we need to talk about Jason," I said after some small talk. She sighed. "Samantha, please. Your father's been so stressed lately. Is that why he's been increasing his blood pressure medication?" Mom looked startled. "How did you know about that?" "Tyler mentioned Dad hasn't been feeling well. Is Jason's behavior contributing to that stress?" "Your brother is going through a difficult time," she said automatically. "Mom, Jason is stealing from Dad's company." "Did you know that?" A flicker of something worry-guilt crossed her face. "Your father handles the business matters. But you're worried too. I can see it." She turned back to her roses. "Your father believes in Jason, even when the evidence says he shouldn't. Family supports each other, Samantha. Like how you all supported me when Jason humiliated my daughter." The barb hit home. Mom's shoulders slumped. "I'm sorry about what happened to Lily. I tried talking to Jason, but you know how he gets. It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement I'd gotten. I pressed my advantage. Mom, I'm worried about Dad's health. The stress isn't good for him. And if Jason is misusing company resources..." "Your father would never press charges against his own son," she interrupted. "So you do know." She didn't deny it. "What exactly do you want from me, Samantha?" "The truth. And for someone to finally hold Jason accountable before he ruins this family." My mother's response was interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. "Margaret," my father's voice called out. "Out here," Mom replied, shooting me a warning look. Dad appeared, his face darkening when he saw me. "Samantha, didn't know you were coming by." "Just visiting Mom," I said carefully. "Well, I came home early because the school counselor called. Something about Lily having trouble. Jason mentioned he was concerned." My blood ran cold. "What?" He said Lily's been saying concerning things at school, that she's afraid to come to family gatherings now. The manipulation was breathtaking. Jason had actually called Lily's school pretending to be a concerned uncle. "Dad, that's not. If you're using my granddaughter in this ridiculous feud with your brother Samantha." Robert, Mom interjected, surprising us both. "Perhaps we should listen to what Samantha has to say." Dad looked between us suspiciously. "What's going on here?" I took a deep breath. "Dad, I need to show you something about the company accounts." His face hardened. "Jason warned me you might try this. Said you've been asking questions trying to cause trouble." "Please, just look at the records," I pleaded. "Enough. I won't have you trying to poison me against your brother. He made a mistake with Lily." He apologized. He absolutely did not apologize. And now it's time to move on. The business is my concern, not yours." I left defeated but more determined than ever. On my way out, I received a text from a blocked number: "Back off or things get worse for Lily. J." That evening I received a call from Heather Wilson, Lily's school counselor. "Mrs. Mitchell, I wanted to talk about the concerns raised by Lily's uncle." "Miss Wilson, my brother has no authority to discuss my daughter's education." I realized that after our conversation seemed off. He implied there were issues at home affecting Lily's behavior, but when I spoke with Lily today, she seemed perfectly fine except for mentioning an incident with her uncle at a birthday party. "My brother hurt Lily's feelings very badly. Now he's trying to cause problems for us because I confronted him about it." "I understand. I'll make a note that all communication should go through you or your husband only." Heather became an unexpected ally, helping document Jason's inappropriate contact with the school. That night, as I updated my growing file of Jason's misdeeds, David made a shocking discovery while reviewing our family photos from the past year. "Sam, look at this," he said, pointing to a picture from Dad's office during the company holiday party. In the background, barely visible on Dad's desk, was a bank statement. David enlarged the image. That's a withdrawal for $50,000. The same day Jason bought his new car, it wasn't just company credit cards. Jason was taking serious money from our father. I knew I had to confront Dad with evidence he couldn't ignore, no matter how painful the revelation would be. Armed with the financial evidence David and I had gathered, I requested a meeting with my father at his office. I chose neutral territory where Jason wouldn't be present and where Dad would be in business mode rather than family mode. "You have 15 minutes, Dad said gruffly when I arrived. "I have a supplier meeting at 11. I placed a folder on his desk. "I need you to look at these bank statements and credit card receipts." Dad's eyebrows rose. "How did you get these?" "That's not important right now. What matters is what they show." Reluctantly, he opened the folder and began reviewing the contents. I'd highlighted the concerning transactions, large cash withdrawals, coinciding with Jason's purchases, company credit card charges at casinos and high-end restaurants, and most damning, a series of transfers to an account, labeled only as consulting fees, that matched the dates of known gambling tournaments in Atlantic City. Dad's face grew increasingly grim as he flipped through the pages. When he finally looked up, I expected anger but instead saw something that broke my heart: the pain of betrayal. "How long have you known about this?" he asked quietly. "I've been putting the pieces together over the past few weeks. Dad, Jason has a gambling problem, and he's been using company resources to fund it." Dad's hand trembled slightly as he closed the folder. "I need to verify these myself." "Of course. If this is some attempt to turn me against your brother, it's not. I wish it wasn't true. But Jason needs help, not enablement." I left his office unsure if I'd made any progress. 2 days later, Dad called and asked me to come to the house for a family meeting. My stomach knotted at the thought of facing Jason, but I knew this confrontation was inevitable. When David and I arrived, Jason's car was already in the driveway. Inside, the tension was thick enough to cut. Mom sat rigid on the edge of the sofa, while Jason lounged in Dad's recliner, the picture of relaxed confidence. "Sammy's finally here," he announced. "Now we can get this intervention started." "Intervention?" I echoed, confused. Dad emerged from his study looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Sit down, Samantha." We all gathered in the living room. Dad remained standing, his expression grave. "I've reviewed the financial records," he began. Jason straightened slightly, his facade of relaxation slipping. "There are indeed irregularities in the accounts," Dad continued. "I can explain those," Jason interrupted. "They're legitimate business expenses for client development." "Casino hotels in Atlantic City are client development?" Dad asked sharply. Jason's expression flickered. "I was meeting potential suppliers." "And the cash withdrawals, the consulting fees, to an account that apparently leads to an offshore gambling site." The color drained from Jason's face. "Someone's been tampering with the records. Probably Sam. She's always been jealous of me." "I had our accountant verify everything independently," Dad said quietly. "This isn't about your sister. This is about you stealing from the company. From me." Jason's confident mask crumpled, replaced by a calculated vulnerability I'd seen countless times. "Dad, I've been struggling. I made some mistakes, got in over my head. I was going to pay it all back once I learned the business." He shot me a venomous glare before continuing. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I just needed some help, and I was too ashamed to ask directly." The performance was masterful, the prodigal son remorseful and humble. I watched in disbelief as Dad's stern expression softened. "We'll figure this out," Dad said with a sigh. "But things have to change, Jason. No more company credit cards, no more blank checks." "Of course," Jason agreed readily. "Whatever it takes to make this right. I'll get help for the gambling, I promise." That was it. After stealing tens of thousands of dollars, all Jason had to do was promise to do better. "What about what he did to Lily?" I asked, unable to contain myself. Jason turned to me with manufactured sincerity. "I feel terrible about that, Sammy. I was under so much pressure that day. The debts, the secrets. I took it out on Lily, and that was wrong. Not a real apology, but close enough for my parents apparently. There you see, Mom said, relief evident in her voice. Jason regrets what happened. We can all move forward now. Move forward, I repeated incredulously. He stole from Dad, traumatized my daughter, manipulated everyone, and all he gets is a slap on the wrist, Samantha, Dad warned. Your brother is taking responsibility. That takes courage. This isn't responsibility. This is the same act he's been putting on his entire life, and you're falling for it again. The meeting deteriorated from there. Jason played the victim, claiming my attacks were making it harder for him to focus on recovery. Dad gave him one more chance to prove himself. Mom tearfully begged for family harmony. As we were leaving, Mom pulled me aside while Jason was speaking with Dad in the study. I know you're upset, she whispered, but I believe Jason's gambling is a real problem. He needs help, not punishment. You believe him about the gambling, but not about what he said to Lily. Mom looked away. I know what he said was wrong, but he's still your brother. And Lily is your granddaughter, I reminded her. Whose side are you really on, Mom? I don't want to take sides, she insisted. That's the problem with this family, always sides, always keeping score. The divide in our family became impossible to ignore. The following weekend was my grandmother's 80th birthday celebration at my aunt's house. The tension was palpable as relatives, who had heard different versions of events, awkwardly navigated conversations. Cousin Emma avoided me entirely. Uncle Rick, Dad's brother, cornered me by the punch bowl. Your father's beside himself over this business with Jason, he said accusingly. Was it really necessary to go digging through company finances? Was it necessary for Jason to steal thousands of dollars? I countered. My mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, took a different view. About time someone stood up to that boy, she said when we found a moment alone. He's been getting away with murder for years. Her husband, Uncle George, nodded in agreement. Robert's been blind when it comes to Jason. Always has been. I was surprised to discover these unexpected allies. I thought everyone always sided with Jason. Hardly, Aunt Patricia scoffed. We've just learned to keep our opinions to ourselves. Your father doesn't take criticism of Jason well. The extended family had effectively split into camps, those who believed Jason's manipulative version of events and those who had seen through him for years. Meanwhile, David was feeling the strain too. His parents called, concerned about family drama they'd heard about from my mother. They think we should just let it go, David told me that night. Said family conflicts aren't worth it in the long run. And Lily, is she not worth standing up for? Of course she is, David said firmly. I told them exactly that. Rachel provided much-needed perspective when the situation felt overwhelming. You need to document everything, she advised. Jason's manipulations, the financial records, everything. If this gets worse, you'll need proof. For a moment, I considered simply walking away from it all, cutting ties with my parents and Jason, focusing solely on my own family. But the thought of Jason continuing to exploit my father, potentially running the family business into the ground and facing no consequences for his actions, stopped me. One evening, after a particularly difficult phone call with my mother, I broke down. Maybe I should just give up, I told David. Let them have their perfect son and their perfect family without me complicating things. Is that really what you want? He asked gently. No, I admitted. I want justice. I want Jason to finally face consequences for once in his life. I want my parents to see him for who he really is. Then we keep fighting, David said simply. Not just for Lily, but for you. And for your parents too, even if they don't realize they need saving. The battle lines were drawn, and I was committed to seeing this through, whatever the cost. 3 weeks after the confrontation at my parents' house, my cell phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost sent it to voicemail, wary of the constant spam calls that plagued my work phone, but something made me answer. Is this Samantha Mitchell? A woman's voice, hesitant but determined. Yes. Who's calling? My name is Caitlin Reeves. I used to date your brother Jason. I immediately recognized the name. Jason and Caitlin had been together for nearly 2 years before Amber entered the picture. The breakup had been abrupt, with Jason offering only vague explanations about growing apart. What can I do for you, Caitlin? I think we should meet. There are things you need to know about your brother. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in a neighboring town somewhere Jason and his friends wouldn't likely go. When I arrived, I spotted her immediately, petite with auburn hair, nursing a cup of tea at a corner table. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. "I wasn't sure you would." "I'm intrigued," I admitted. "Jason never talked much about why you two broke up." A bitter smile crossed her face. "I'm sure he didn't. It's not a flattering story for him." Over the next hour, Caitlin outlined a disturbing pattern of manipulation and financial exploitation. Jason had borrowed money, repeatedly draining her savings account of nearly $15,000. He'd convinced her to co-sign for a car he never made payments on, destroying her credit. And when she finally confronted him, he'd threatened to release private photos if she pursued the money he owed. "I was too embarrassed to fight it at the time," she explained. "But I've been in therapy and I've realized staying silent only protects him." "Why come forward now?" I asked. "I saw a photo of your parents on social media. Your father looks unwell." Her eyes met mine directly, and I recognized the woman with Jason, Amber. She was already in the picture before he and I broke up. "She's not who you think she is." "What do you mean?" "She worked at the casino where Jason gambled. That's how they met. She's got a history of attaching herself to wealthy men with problems." This new information aligned with the pieces I'd been gathering. "Do you think they're working together somehow?" Caitlin nodded. "I overheard them once before I knew about the affair. They were discussing how to approach your father about the transfer." "What transfer?" "I don't know exactly, but Jason said something about getting your father to sign while he was still feeling generous." A chill ran down my spine. "When was this?" "About 7 months ago, right before we broke up." 7 months. Around the time Dad had first mentioned retirement plans. "There's more," Caitlin said. "After we split, I kept tabs on Jason through mutual friends. His gambling debts are serious. He owes money to people you don't want to be indebted to." "How serious?" "6 figures from what I heard. And these aren't casino debts with payment plans. These are private games, dangerous people." As I drove home, my mind raced. If Jason was desperate enough to manipulate my father into signing over the business to cover gambling debts, how far would he go? I shared everything with David that night. "We need to warn your father," he said immediately. "He won't believe me." "Not without proof." "Then we get proof." Over the next few days, I pieced together more of Jason's scheme through careful conversations with Tyler at Dad's company, and by checking in with Aunt Patricia, who had spoken with my mother recently. "Your mother mentioned Jason's been bringing up power of attorney," Aunt Patricia reported, "saying your father might want to consider it given his health concerns." "What health concerns?" I asked, alarmed. "Apparently your father's blood pressure has been erratic lately. Jason suggested it might be early signs of something more serious." The next revelation came from an unlikely source. Mom called one evening, her voice tight with worry. "Your father's not feeling well," she said. "His medication doesn't seem to be working properly." "What's happening?" "Dizziness, confusion sometimes. The doctor adjusted his dosage, but it's not helping." A terrible suspicion formed in my mind. Mom, who handles Dad's medication? "I do, mostly. Though Jason's been helping lately when he comes over. He's been so attentive, stopping by every morning to check on your father." "Every morning?" "When Dad would take his blood pressure medication." "Mom, I think you should take Dad to a different doctor. Today." "What? Why?" "Please trust me on this. And don't tell Jason you're going." She hesitated. "Samantha, what are you suggesting?" I couldn't bring myself to voice my suspicion over the phone. "Just please do this. For Dad's sake." To my relief, she agreed, though I could tell she didn't understand the urgency. That same day, Nicole Harrington, an attorney friend from college, reviewed the information I'd gathered. "If what you're suggesting is true," she said carefully, "this goes beyond family drama. Tampering with medication, attempting to gain power of attorney under false pretenses, these are serious legal issues. What can I do? My father won't listen to me directly. Document everything. And I mean everything. Get copies of the medication bottles if possible. See if your mother will allow a blood test for your father. And most importantly, make sure your father doesn't sign anything Jason puts in front of him." I felt sick at the thought of what might have happened if I hadn't started investigating. How far would Jason have gone? The following morning, my phone rang at 7 a.m. Mom, her voice shaking. "Your father's in the hospital. He collapsed this morning." "What happened?" "I don't know. One minute he was fine, the next. Sam, the doctor is saying his blood pressure was dangerously low. They're running tests. I'm on my way. Mom, please don't leave Dad alone and don't let Jason make any decisions." "Jason's already here. He drove us to the emergency room." My heart sank. "Don't let him talk to the doctors alone. Promise me." By the time David and I reached the hospital, the emergency room was in chaos. Dad had been admitted, and Mom sat tearfully in the waiting area, while Jason paced nearby, phone pressed to his ear. "Just make sure those papers are ready," he was saying as we approached. "Today might be our only chance." He spotted us and quickly ended the call. "What are you doing here?" "Mom called me," I said. "How's Dad?" "Stable," Jason replied, his tone clipped. "Doctor says it's likely a medication reaction." I bet it was. "Have they done a full tox screen?" Jason's eyes narrowed. "Why would they do that? It's obviously his blood pressure medication." "I'm going to check on Dad," I said, moving past him toward the nurse's station. Jason caught my arm. "He's resting. Leave him alone." "Let go of me," I said quietly, aware of my mother watching us with apprehension. "Always have to make everything about you, don't you?" Jason hissed. "Even Dad's health crisis becomes the Samantha show." David stepped forward. "Take your hand off my wife. Now." The confrontation might have escalated further if a doctor hadn't approached at that moment. "Mrs. Mitchell," he addressed my mother. "Your husband is awake now. You can see him." "We'll all go," Jason said quickly. The doctor shook his head. "Family only, and just 2 at a time, please." "We're all family," Jason insisted. "I'm his daughter," I said. "Mom, you go first. I'll wait." Jason had no choice but to back down as Mom followed the doctor through the swinging doors. The moment they were out of earshot, I turned on him. "What did you do to Dad's medication?" Jason's face registered shock before smoothing into indignation. "What are you talking about?" "I know about the power of attorney. About your plan to get Dad to sign over the business today." "You're insane," he scoffed, but a flicker of panic crossed his features. "The doctor is running a comprehensive toxicology screen right now," I bluffed. "What do you think they'll find?" Jason paled. "Nothing, because I didn't do anything." At that moment, Amber appeared at the entrance to the waiting room carrying a manila envelope. She froze when she saw me. "Perfect timing," I said coldly. "Did you bring the papers Jason needs Dad to sign?" Amber looked to Jason uncertainly. "I thought you said your sister wouldn't be here." "What papers?" David asked, stepping closer. "Nothing," Jason snapped. "Business documents Dad asked me to bring." "Let me see them," I demanded. "They're private company matters. If they involve Dad's business, they involve his estate. Show me the papers or I'm calling security and telling them you're trying to coerce signatures from a medically vulnerable patient." The standoff lasted several tense seconds before Mom reappeared, her face drawn. "Jason," she said quietly, "your father wants to speak with you." A triumphant smirk flashed across Jason's face as he moved toward the doors. I caught Mom's arm. "What did the doctor say?" She hesitated, glancing at Amber, who was still clutching the envelope. "They found something unusual in Dad's blood work. The doctor is concerned his medication may have been tampered with. Mom, don't let Dad sign anything Jason brings him. Please. To my surprise, she nodded slowly. I heard them on the phone this morning, Jason and Amber. Something about papers that needed to be signed today. For the first time I saw genuine doubt in my mother's eyes regarding Jason. It was a start. The hospital corridor felt endless as I followed a nurse to my father's room. Mom had finally convinced the staff to let me see him despite Jason's protests that Dad needed rest. Inside the scene was jarring. My father, always larger than life, looked diminished against the white hospital sheets. IV lines snaking from his arm, monitors beeping steadily beside him. "Sammy," he said weakly as I entered. "Your mother said you were here." "How are you feeling, Dad?" I asked, taking the chair beside his bed. "Like I've been hit by a truck," he admitted. "Doctor says my blood pressure dropped dangerously low. Something about possible medication interaction." I chose my words carefully. "Dad, has Jason been handling your medication recently?" A flicker of confusion crossed his face. "Sometimes. He's been coming by in the mornings to check on me." "Why?" "The doctor didn't mention anything else about your blood work." Dad shifted uncomfortably. "They found traces of something that shouldn't be there. Another medication I don't take." My suspicions hardened into certainty. "Dad, I need to tell you something important, and I need you to really hear me." For the next 10 minutes I laid out everything: Caitlin's revelations about Jason's gambling debts, the suspicious timing of his interest in power of attorney, the paper trail of financial misconduct, and my fear that he had been tampering with Dad's medication to make him more compliant. To my surprise, Dad didn't immediately dismiss my concerns. He listened silently, his expression growing more troubled with each revelation. "That's quite an accusation," he finally said. "Tampering with my medication. I know how it sounds, but Jason is desperate. These gambling debts aren't to casinos, Dad. They're to dangerous people. Even so, he's my son. He wouldn't—" The door opened, interrupting us. Jason entered, followed closely by Mom. His eyes darted between Dad and me, clearly trying to assess what had been said. "You should rest, Dad," he said smoothly. "Sam can visit later." "Actually," Dad said, his voice stronger, "we were having an important conversation." Jason's smile tightened. "About what?" "About why my medication might have been tampered with." What Jason laughed, but it sounded forced. "That's ridiculous. It was probably just a pharmacy error. The toxicology report found a medication used to lower blood pressure," I said, "mixed with Dad's regular pills. A medication Dad doesn't take." "And you think I did that?" Jason's voice rose indignantly. "This is exactly the kind of paranoid accusation I was warning everyone about. Sam's been trying to turn you against me for weeks." "Nobody's accusing you of anything," Dad said wearily. "But it is concerning." "I can't believe this," Jason muttered. He turned to our mother. "Are you hearing this? After everything I've done to help take care of Dad." Mom looked torn, her gaze shifting between her husband and her son. "By the way," I said, "Amber's outside with some papers she said Dad needed to sign today." "What exactly are those papers, Jason?" Jason's face flushed. "Just some routine business matters Dad asked me to prepare. Nothing sinister." "Then you won't mind if we have the hospital's patient advocate review them first?" I suggested. "That's not necessary," Jason snapped. "They're private company documents." "I think it's a reasonable precaution," Dad said slowly. "Given the circumstances." Jason looked like he'd been slapped. "You don't trust me." "It's not about trust, son. It's about proper procedure." The tension in the room was broken by a commotion in the hallway. A nurse appeared at the door. "Mr. Mitchell, there's a woman insisting on seeing you. Says she's your son's girlfriend." "Let her in," Dad said. Amber entered, still clutching the manila envelope. Her confident demeanor faltered when she saw all of us gathered around the bed. "I brought those papers you needed to sign," she said to Dad, glancing nervously at Jason. "What papers exactly?" Dad asked. The transfer documents. For the business." Jason said it was urgent. The room fell silent. Dad's expression hardened as he turned to Jason. "Transfer documents. I never authorized any transfer of the business." Jason's facade began to crumble. It's just preliminary paperwork, for when you're ready to retire. Which would give you control of the company, I added. Today. Jason told me you'd agreed to sign everything over, Amber continued, seemingly unaware of the tension. Because of your health concerns. Dad's face darkened. I have made no such agreement. Amber looked confused, but Jason said, "Shut up, Amber," Jason hissed. Too late. Mom stepped forward, her usual placating manner replaced by cold anger. You were planning to trick your father into signing over his company. Today, while he's medicated and in the hospital, Jason's composure collapsed entirely. You don't understand, I need this. Those people will kill me if I don't pay. What people? Dad demanded. The men I owe money to. I tried to win it back, but it just got worse, and now they're threatening me. The confession hung in the air, damning and irretrievable. No one spoke as the implications settled over us. How much? Dad finally asked. Jason looked at the floor. 350,000, Mom gasped. Dad closed his eyes, briefly absorbing the blow. And you thought stealing my company was the solution? He asked quietly. I was going to fix everything, Jason insisted. Once I had control, I could take out a business loan to cover the debts. No one would ever know, except you'd have fraudulently acquired my life's work, Dad pointed out. The company I built from nothing. From the doorway came another voice. Excuse me, is this Robert Mitchell's room? A hospital security officer stood there, accompanied by Emma, my cousin, who had sided with Jason at the cafe ambush. Emma? I said, surprised. What are you doing here? She looked uncomfortable. I overheard Jason on the phone last night. He was talking about getting Uncle Robert to sign papers while he was incapacitated. It didn't sound right. So you called hospital security? Jason spat. Traitor. I was worried, Emma said defensively. And after what you told me about Sam, I realized you've been lying. About everything. As if on cue, a doctor entered with a clipboard. Mr. Mitchell, we have the full toxicology results. There are concerning levels of a medication called clonidine in your system. It's used to lower blood pressure and can cause dangerous drops when combined with your prescribed medication. Do you take this drug? No, Dad said. I don't. All eyes turned to Jason, who backed away, bumping into the security officer. This is insane, he stammered. I didn't do anything. We'll need to report this to the police, the doctor said gravely. Medication tampering is a serious offense. Jason looked wildly around the room like a cornered animal. Dad, you can't believe I would hurt you. Tell them. But Dad's expression had changed. The blinders were finally off. I think you should leave, Jason. Now, but security will escort you out, Dad continued. And I strongly suggest you don't come back until you're ready to tell the whole truth. Mom, Jason appealed desperately. For once, Mom stood firm. How could you, Jason, your own father? As security led Jason and a shell-shocked Amber away, I finally felt the weight of vindication, but it brought no joy. Only sadness for what our family had become and relief that we discovered the truth before irreparable damage was done. Dad reached for my hand. I should have listened to you sooner, Sammy. It doesn't matter now, I said, squeezing his fingers. What matters is you're okay. No, he said firmly. It does matter. I've been blind where Jason's concerned. For far too long. Outside in the hallway, we could hear Jason's protests fading as security escorted him from the building. His desperate pleas were a stark contrast to his usual confident manipulation. As the doctor explained the next steps, police reports, extended observation, potential legal consequences, I realized this was just the beginning of a long road for our family. But for the first time in years, we were facing the truth together. The next 48 hours passed in a blur. Dad remained in the hospital for observation while Mom stayed by his side shell, shocked by the revelations about Jason. I split my time between the hospital home with Lily and meetings with the police who were investigating the medication tampering. Jason had disappeared. His apartment was empty when officers went to question him, clothes and essentials gone. Amber too had vanished, her social media accounts suddenly deleted. The temporary relief I felt at their absence was shattered when Dad's accountant called with disturbing news. "Several company accounts have been emptied," she reported grimly. "Transfers made yesterday to offshore accounts. We're looking at nearly $200,000 missing. Can we reverse the transfers?" I asked. "We're trying, but once money goes offshore, it's difficult to retrieve." I shared the news with Dad, watching his face age before my eyes. "I gave him access to those accounts last year," he said quietly. "Thought it would help him learn the business." The betrayal cut deep, not just the theft itself, but the calculated timing. While we were focused on Dad's health crisis, Jason had been systematically looting the company. The police added grand theft to their investigation, but recovering the money seemed increasingly unlikely. Then, 3 days after Dad came home from the hospital, Tyler called with an unexpected lead. "Jason used his company email to book a reservation at your family's lake house," he said. Confirmation came through the work server. The lake house, a small cabin on Lake Minnetonka that had been in our family for generations. Of course Jason would go there. It was remote enough to hide out, yet familiar territory. "Have you told the police?" I asked. "Not yet. Thought you might want to handle this within the family first." I discussed it with my parents that evening. Dad, still weakened from his hospital stay, insisted on confronting Jason himself. "Absolutely not," Mom said firmly. "You're in no condition." "He's my son," Dad argued. "My responsibility." "And my brother," I added. "I'll go." David insisted on accompanying me, and to my surprise, Mom asked to come too. "I need to see him," she said. "Need to understand how it came to this." We arrived at the lake house just before dusk. Jason's car was parked haphazardly in the gravel driveway, and lights burned inside the cabin. I texted Detective Ramirez, who was handling the case, with our location. He replied that officers were 30 minutes away. "Let me go in first," I suggested. "He might bolt if he sees all of us." David squeezed my hand. "Be careful." The wooden steps creaked as I climbed to the porch. Through the window I could see Jason pacing, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing wildly. I knocked. The curtain twitched, and Jason's face appeared, registering shock at seeing me. The door remained closed. "Jason," I called. "We need to talk." After a long moment, the lock clicked and the door opened. Jason looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, clothes rumpled as if he'd been sleeping in them. "Come to gloat?" he asked bitterly. "No. To understand." He laughed humorlessly but stepped aside to let me enter. The cabin's interior was chaotic, empty bottles on the coffee table, papers scattered across the floor, suitcases open with clothes spilling out. "Where's Amber?" I asked. "Gone," he said flatly. Turns out she was only interested in Jason the heir, not Jason the fugitive. "The police are looking for you." "I know. And Dad knows about the money you took." Jason's facade cracked slightly. "How is he?" "Heartbroken. Betrayed. But physically recovering." "I never meant to hurt him," Jason said, slumping onto the sofa. "The medication, I just wanted him to be more compliant, easier to convince. I didn't know it would make him collapse." "You could have killed him, Jason." "But I didn't want to." The desperation in his voice seemed genuine. "You have to believe me, Sam. I just needed the money. These guys I owe, they don't mess around. They were threatening me, threatening Amber." "So you thought stealing Dad's company was the answer, emptying the accounts?" "I was desperate," Jason shouted, jumping to his feet. "You don't know what it's like to be drowning in debt, to have people threatening to break your legs. I had to do something." "You could have asked for help," I said quietly, "before it got this bad. From who, Dad? He'd have been so disappointed." You've always judged me, always thought you were better." "That's not true." "Isn't it perfect Samantha, with her perfect job and perfect husband and perfect kid? Always doing everything right while I could never measure up." The bitterness in his voice was staggering. This warped perception of our relationship had been festering for years. "Is that really how you see things?" I asked. Before he could answer, the front door opened. Mom stood there, her face pale but determined. Mom, Jason faltered suddenly, looking like a lost child. "Oh, Jason," she said, her voice breaking. "What have you done?" Something in Jason finally collapsed. The arrogance, the manipulation, the facades all crumbled as he faced our mother's disappointment. "I messed up, Mom," he whispered. "I messed everything up." As Mom moved to him, David appeared in the doorway followed by 2 police officers. "Jason Mitchell," one officer said, "we need you to come with us." The arrest was subdued. Jason offered no resistance as they read him his rights and led him to the waiting police car. He looked back once, his eyes meeting mine with a mixture of defeat and something that might have been relief. The fallout was immediate and far-reaching. Jason was charged with multiple felonies: theft, fraud, medication tampering, and attempted financial elder abuse. The prosecutor offered a plea deal that would include restitution and prison time. Dad, once his staunchest defender, now faced the painful task of pressing charges against his own son. "He needs to face consequences," he said during a family meeting at our house. "Real ones for once in his life." Mom struggled more with the decision. "He's still our son," she argued tearfully. "He needs help, not prison." "He can get help in prison," Dad replied. "But there has to be accountability." The missing money complicated matters. While some of the transfers were reversed, much of it had disappeared, likely paid to Jason's gambling creditors. Dad had to tap into retirement funds to keep the company afloat, the financial strain evident in the new lines on his face. 2 weeks after Jason's arrest, Dad asked me to meet him at his office. The building felt different now, the family business and crisis employees whispering about the scandal, uncertainty hanging in the air. "I want you to come work with me," Dad said without preamble when I entered his office. "What?" "The company needs a steady hand. Someone with business sense who actually cares about its future." He smiled slightly. "Your marketing background would be an asset." I was stunned. "Dad, I have my own career." "I know, and I'd never ask you to abandon that. But I need help, Sammy. Part-time advisory capacity, whatever works for you. I trust you." Those 3 words healed something I hadn't realized was still broken inside me. The extended family adjusted to the new reality in various ways. Emma apologized for doubting me. Jason was so convincing, she explained. "He told me you were having mental health issues, that you were jealous of his relationship with your parents." Other relatives took longer to accept the truth. Uncle Rick, Dad's brother, who had always favored Jason, initially insisted there must be some misunderstanding. "The boy has problems, sure, but he wouldn't deliberately harm his father," he insisted until the evidence became impossible to deny. The most surprising reaction came from my mother. After years of enabling Jason's behavior, she seemed to undergo a profound transformation. "I failed both of you," she told me during a quiet moment at home. "Failed Jason by never setting boundaries. Failed you by expecting you to always understand, always forgive, always accommodate." "Mom, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," she insisted. "I was so afraid of conflict that I allowed terrible patterns to develop. I won't make that mistake again." The proof of her change came when Jason's attorney approached us about character witnesses for his sentencing hearing. Mom declined. "I love my son," she told the lawyer, "but I won't help him escape responsibility for his actions. Not anymore." As the legal proceedings continued, we discovered one final betrayal that almost broke me. During a meeting with Nicole, my attorney friend who was helping us navigate the legal complexities, a disturbing document came to light. "This was found in Jason's apartment during the police search," Nicole said, sliding a folder across her desk. "They just released it to us. Inside was a detailed plan to gain guardianship over Lily if anything happened to David and me. Jason had collected evidence of supposed parental unfitness, manipulated photos, out of context quotes, fabricated concerns from teachers. He was planning to take my daughter." My voice shook with rage and horror. "It looks like a contingency plan," Nicole explained gently. "If his other schemes failed and you continued to oppose him." The discovery left me reeling. That night, I held Lily extra tight as I tucked her in, overwhelmed by how close we'd come to disaster. "Is Uncle Jason ever coming back?" she asked sleepily. I stroked her hair. "I don't know, sweetheart. He did some very wrong things and has to face the consequences, like when I broke Mom's vase and had to use my allowance to help buy a new one." "Something like that," I said, smiling despite the tears in my eyes. "But much, much bigger." "I'm sorry he didn't like my picture frame," she murmured, already drifting toward sleep. "That was never about your frame, Lily," I whispered. "It was about him. And I promise no one will ever make you feel that way again." 6 months after Jason's arrest, our family settled into a new normal. Dad's health had improved significantly now that his medication wasn't being tampered with. The company was slowly recovering from the financial blow, with my part-time input helping to stabilize operations and restore client confidence. Jason had accepted a plea deal, 5 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 3 mandatory gambling addiction treatment and a restitution agreement that would take decades to fulfill. The reality of his actions had finally caught up with him. I visited the prison once 2 months into his sentence. The man across the table in the visitation room bore little resemblance to the confident, manipulative brother I'd grown up with. Prison had stripped away his facades. "Why did you come?" he asked, genuinely puzzled. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Closure, maybe." We talked stiffly for 20 minutes about nothing important. As our time ended, Jason finally met my eyes directly. "Is Dad really letting you help with the business?" "Yes. We're working together to rebuild what you damaged." He nodded slowly. "You'll do better with it than I would have." It was perhaps the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. Mom had thrown herself into family therapy sessions, both individually and with Dad. The process was painful but necessary, excavating decades of unhealthy patterns and enabling behaviors. "I keep thinking about all the times I should have stepped in," she confessed, "during a family session that included David and me. All the times I saw what was happening but chose peace over truth." "We all made mistakes," Dad acknowledged. "I put Jason on a pedestal, expected less of him, gave him more. I thought I was being a good father, but I was setting him up for failure." The therapist, Dr. Winters, nodded. "Favoritism damages both children, the favored and the unfavored. Jason never developed proper coping skills or accountability. Samantha learned her needs were secondary." Hearing my father acknowledge these dynamics was both vindicating and healing. The little girl inside me, who had always tried harder, achieved more only to be overshadowed by her brother's needs, finally felt seen. The extended family rallied around us in unexpected ways. Aunt Patricia and Uncle George became regular visitors, their steady support a balm during difficult days. Cousins I had barely spoken to in years reached out with messages of support. Most surprising was the transformation in my relationship with my mother. After years of feeling that she prioritized Jason's feelings over mine, we were developing a new, more honest connection. "I found these the other day," she said one afternoon, showing me a box of my childhood achievements, report cards, art projects, certificates that she had carefully preserved. "I always was proud of you, Samantha. I just didn't show it enough because I was so busy managing Jason's crises." David observed these changes with quiet satisfaction. "You're getting the family recognition you always deserved," he said. "Lily, resilient as children often are, recovered from the trauma of Jason's cruelty with the help of play therapy. The incident with the picture frame had left deeper wounds than we initially realized, feelings of rejection and inadequacy that needed professional guidance to heal. Children often internalize rejection from family members," her therapist explained. "They assume there must be something wrong with them rather than with the adult who behaved poorly." With time and support, Lily's natural confidence returned. She even began making art again, though she remained wary of sharing it with extended family. One significant change was the establishment of new family traditions that honored everyone equally. The old pattern of centering gatherings around Jason's preferences and schedule was replaced by more inclusive planning. I thought we might do Thanksgiving at your house this year, Dad suggested in October. If you're willing to host? The simple request acknowledged my place in the family, in a way that previous hollow compliments never had. During this period of healing, relationships with previously estranged relatives flourished. My father's sister Elizabeth, who had distanced herself years ago after conflicts with Jason, reconnected with the family. I always saw what was happening, she told me during her first visit back. Robert wouldn't hear it from me, but I saw how Jason manipulated everyone. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you more. On a crisp Saturday in October, we gathered at my parents' home for my father's 61st birthday. A deliberately small, meaningful celebration to replace the previous year's disaster. Lily had spent days creating a special gift for her grandfather, a hand-bound book of drawings depicting their favorite activities together. When Dad opened it, tears filled his eyes. "This is the most beautiful gift I've ever received," he told her, pulling her into a tight hug. Mom captured the moment in a photograph, the first of many for our new family album, to replace the one in the broken frame. Later that evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Dad and I sat on the porch swing watching the sunset. "I keep thinking about patterns," he said. "How we repeat what we've learned, often without realizing it." "What do you mean?" "My father favored my brother too," he admitted. "I swore I'd never do that to my children, yet I did exactly the same thing. Different reasons, same result." "At least you recognized it," I offered. "That's more than some people ever do." "Too late, though." "It's never too late to change patterns, Dad." He squeezed my hand. "You're wiser than I was at your age. Wiser than I am now, probably." The next morning, an unexpected letter arrived from Jason, his first communication since my prison visit. I opened it with trepidation. "Samantha," it began. "I've been in therapy here, trying to understand why I did what I did. I don't expect forgiveness. I wouldn't forgive me either. But I want you to know I'm finally seeing things clearly. The medication, the stealing, the way I treated Lily, none of it was justifiable. You were right to fight back. If you never want to hear from me again, I'll understand. But if someday, years from now, there's any possibility of redemption, I'll work every day to earn it. Jay." I folded the letter carefully, neither accepting nor rejecting its tentative olive branch. Reconciliation might be possible someday, but trust would need to be rebuilt slowly, if at all. For now, it was enough to know that Jason was finally confronting his demons. What mattered most was that Lily was learning important lessons through all of this. Not just about standing up for herself, but about the complicated reality of family dynamics, the importance of boundaries, and the courage to speak truth, even when it's difficult. "Mom," she asked me one day as we worked on a new art project together, "do you think people can really change?" I considered the events of the past year, my parents' awakening, Jason's downfall, my own growth from peacekeeper to advocate. "Yes," I told her. "I believe they can. But they have to want to change, and they have to work hard at it every day." She nodded solemnly, adding another careful brushstroke to her painting. "I'm glad you didn't let Uncle Jason be mean to me without saying something. I'll always stand up for you," I promised. Always. And that perhaps was the greatest lesson in all of this, that protecting those we love sometimes means confronting difficult truths, that real family loyalty isn't about keeping secrets, but about holding each other accountable, and that it's never too late to break destructive cycles and create healthier patterns for the future. Thank you for listening to my story today. If you've ever stood up for yourself or someone you love against family manipulation, I'd love to hear about your experience in the comments below. Has someone ever dismissed something important to you like Jason did with Lily's gift? How did you handle it? Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life family stories and share with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in their family struggles. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing we can do for our families is hold them accountable, even when it's difficult. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.